At 9:17 p.m. on September 7, 1940, the city of London was already trembling under the steady roar of German bombers. The Blitz had begun. Air raid sirens wailed through the streets as civilians scrambled for shelter, hearts pounding in unison with the distant thuds of exploding bombs. Flames flickered on the horizon, painting the night sky a fiery orange, while smoke curled thickly, choking the air. In the East End district, amidst the rubble and chaos, Mary Collins stood near the entrance of a small basement beneath her modest home. She was just a civilian seamstress by trade, known to her neighbors as quiet and unassuming. But tonight, she was about to become a beacon of hope. The basement was nothing special dark, cramped, barely a refuge. Yet it was dry, sturdy, and below ground. When the first bomb struck nearby, Mary saw families running, desperate for a safe place to hide. She made a decision that many might have hesitated to make, to open her basement doors wide, inviting anyone who needed shelter to come inside. As the air raids continued through the night, more and more people filled the space, children clutching their mothers, elderly men steadying trembling hands, strangers united by fear. The sounds of destruction rumbled above, but inside the basement, a fragile sense of calm grew. Mary moved among them, offering blankets, soothing frightened children, and speaking softly to keep hope alive. Hours passed like this, beneath the city's shattered skies, while outside, the Blitz raged on. Mary Collins was born in 1903, growing up in London's working-class neighborhoods. She had lived through hardship, losing her father at a young age, supporting a family through domestic work, and then learning the delicate art of dressmaking. When war broke out in 1939, her life changed like everyone else's, but she faced it with quiet determination. Her home, like many in the East End, was vulnerable to air raids. The area had already suffered bomb damage during earlier attacks, and the threat weighed heavily on her daily routine. Yet Mary's response was not one of despair, but of resilience. Before the war, Mary had learned the power of community. Her basement, usually used for storage and sewing work, was always a gathering place for neighbors. As tensions escalated, she instinctively prepared it to serve a new purpose: a shelter. She stocked blankets, candles, and provisions from what little she could spare, readying the space for a future she hoped never to come. Mary's story is not one of a soldier or a leader, but of an ordinary civilian whose small acts made an extraordinary difference. She was neither trained nor armed. What she had was courage to open her home to strangers, to face danger with compassion rather than fear. The Blitz was a relentless assault. From September 1940 through May 1941, London faced nightly bombings that tore apart streets and shattered lives. Thousands died, and many more were left homeless. Official shelters were overcrowded, and many people, especially families with children, found themselves exposed and vulnerable. Mary's basement became an unofficial refuge. Word spread quietly but quickly. Neighbors and strangers alike sought her out, finding safety in the cramped, candlelit space. She coordinated simple systems to ration food and water, kept the atmosphere calm, and maintained a presence that comforted those around her. Despite the wrist bombs falling nearby, the constant threat of collapse, Mary refused to close the doors. Each night she faced uncertainty, but chose to be a sanctuary for others. Her actions were not documented officially during the war, lost among countless stories of survival. Yet for those who found shelter with her, she was a guardian angel. This was a time when ordinary people made extraordinary choices. Mary's basement was more than a physical shelter. It was a symbol of humanity in a time when the world seemed to be falling apart. The nights dragged on. The Blitz was unyielding, a storm of fire and steel that tested every soul in London. Mary's basement swelled with humanity. Each raid brought new faces, women clutching infants, exhausted fathers, children too young to understand but old enough to sense danger. Mary's role transformed from seamstress to protector. She organized blankets, kept spirits high with quiet stories, and calmed cries with gentle hands. She learned to navigate the fragility of fear, turning panic into hope with every reassuring word. But the challenge was not just physical. Each night, the weight of responsibility pressed heavier on her heart. She was not a soldier with weapons, nor a commander with orders only, a civilian standing between chaos and the fragile lives below ground. One night, as bombs exploded closer than ever, a group of children arrived, their homes destroyed in a direct hit. Mary wrapped them in blankets, held them close, and promised safety despite the world above. In their wide eyes, she saw the stark truth. War did not discriminate. It touched every life, changed every future. News of Mary's basement spread beyond her street. Local volunteers joined, bringing supplies and helping care for the shelter's growing population. What began as a solitary act became a community effort, small but vital resistance to the destruction surrounding them. Through the cold winter months, the basement sheltered hundreds. It became a place of whispered prayers, shared stories, and fragile laughter. In the face of bombs and loss, Mary's basement was a refuge of resilience. Her transformation was profound. From a quiet civilian, she became a symbol of hope, not through grand gestures, but through constant, unwavering care. The basement was a small world within a shattered city, proof that even in war, humanity can endure. As spring approached and the intensity of the Blitz lessened, Mary continued her work quietly. Her home and basement bore the scars of war, but so did the lives she had touched. Her story, though never widely told, lived in the hearts of those she saved. Mary Collins never sought recognition. She returned to her sewing, her community, her simple life, but the basement she opened was a testament that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from the smallest places and the quietest people. By early 1941, London was a city stretched to its limits. The relentless Blitz had shattered neighborhoods, taken countless lives, and left many more homeless. The East End, where Mary Collins lived, had become one of the hardest hit areas, with official shelters overcrowded and bomb warnings a constant alarm. Survival seemed like a fragile thread. Mary faced a crisis that tested every ounce of her resolve. The small basement that had become a refuge was no longer enough. As more families fled the wreckage, word spread that Mary's shelter could protect them, but the space was cramped beyond capacity. Yet closing the doors was not an option. The need was too great, the desperation too raw. The impossible idea was born out of necessity. What if the basements of nearby homes were also opened and connected, creating a network of underground shelters? Mary envisioned a sanctuary stretching beneath the rubble, a maze where hundreds could hide safely from the bombs above. But the risks were enormous. These basements were dark, narrow, and often unstable after repeated bombings. No one had attempted such a plan before, and the idea faced opposition. Some neighbors feared collapse or gas leaks. Others worried about attracting unwanted attention from authorities or the enemy. Mary's simple basement had been a quiet refuge. Expanding meant exposing the effort. Despite the dangers and doubts, Mary was undeterred. She began organizing meetings with neighbors, sharing her vision with those willing to listen. Slowly, a community effort took shape. Volunteers, many just ordinary civilians like herself, began to clear debris, reinforce walls, and plan safe passages between basements. The effort required trust, cooperation, and courage. In the city divided by fear and destruction, Mary's idea became a beacon, drawing together people who had only ever known hardship and uncertainty. The shared goal of survival transformed neighbors into a team united beneath the surface. The tension rose as the next raid approached. Each night brought the threat of death and destruction. Mary coordinated with local civil defense groups to ensure communication and safety. The underground network, fragile and untested, became a lifeline for hundreds. The impossible was no longer just a hope. It was a plan in motion. On the night of March 10th, 1941, London faced one of the most devastating raids of the Blitz. Hundreds of German bombers unleashed fire over the city, targeting industrial areas but hitting residential neighborhoods with equal fury. Mary's underground network was put to its ultimate test. As sirens blared and buildings shook, hundreds of people scrambled to reach the basements. Mothers carried children through narrow corridors connecting the shelters, while the elderly moved cautiously, aided by neighbors. The air was thick with dust and tension. Above ground, the world exploded. Flames consumed rooftops. The earth trembled with each blast. Below, the basement corridors echoed with whispered prayers and hushed cries, punctuated by Mary's calm voice, guiding those she had gathered. But the danger was far from over. During the raid, a nearby building collapsed, severing one of the connecting tunnels and trapping several families. Panic threatened to break through the fragile calm, but Mary moved quickly, organizing rescue efforts with volunteers who navigated the debris. At one point, a fire broke out near the entrance of another shelter. Smoke filled the tunnels, forcing everyone deeper underground. Mary's leadership was critical. Her steady presence and clear commands helped prevent chaos. She personally assisted a frightened child through the smoke, her hands steady despite the overwhelming fear. Hours passed like an eternity. Outside, the city burned. Inside, the basement network held. When dawn finally broke, the raid ceased. The underground shelters were battered but intact. Mary emerged to find her neighborhood scarred but alive. Hundreds had survived the night because of the basement sanctuary she had helped create. The impossible idea had saved lives. Word of the basement network spread beyond the East End, inspiring similar efforts in other parts of London. Mary's quiet courage and determination had sparked a movement, proving that even in the darkest times, human kindness and ingenuity could create hope. After the Blitz finally ended in May 1941, London began the slow and painful process of rebuilding. The scars of war-destroyed homes, shattered streets, and countless lost lives were visible reminders of the nights when fire rained from the sky. Mary Collins' basement network had quietly played a vital role in saving hundreds of lives. Though her story remained mostly unknown to the wider world for decades, those who took shelter remembered her courage and kindness. She was a civilian without rank or medals, but her impact was profound. Historically, the civilian response during the Blitz is recognized as a crucial part of London's resilience. While the military fought battles abroad, ordinary people faced terror nightly on their home soil. The basement shelters became more than protection. They were a symbol of community strength and the will to survive. Mary's initiative was an example of how grassroots efforts could fill the gaps where official systems struggled. Overcrowded and under-resourced government shelters often left people vulnerable. Her idea to connect basements transformed individual acts of survival into a coordinated effort, demonstrating innovation born from necessity. This story highlights an important truth. War affects not only soldiers on the front lines, but also civilians who endure fear, loss, and uncertainty. Mary's courage was a quiet but powerful resistance against destruction, reminding history that survival is often shaped by the bravery of ordinary people. Mary Collins lived a humble life after the war, returning to her work as a seamstress and quietly caring for her community. She never sought fame or recognition. For her, the basement was simply a place to help others in a moment of crisis. Her legacy, however, extends far beyond one small shelter. Mary's story symbolizes the strength of humanity in its most vulnerable moments. How kindness, courage, and community can shine brightest in darkness. The basement network she helped inspire stands as a reminder that war is not only fought with weapons, but also with compassion and hope. Through Mary's actions, countless lives were spared and countless futures preserved. Today, memorials and museums commemorate the Blitz, but many individual stories like Mary's remain untold or forgotten. Sharing her story honors those civilians who faced unimaginable hardship and yet chose to act with bravery and heart. Her example challenges us to reflect on the power each person holds to make a difference even in the smallest ways. It also urges us to remember that history is not just shaped by generals and battles, but also by the quiet courage of everyday heroes. This is the history of World War II. Whoever oppresses the innocent is an oppressor. Neither the earth belongs to this oppressor, nor does the sky belong to him. We stand, now and forever, with the oppressed. Audience questions. Number 1. If you were living through the Blitz, would you have dared to open your home to strangers like Mary did? What fears or hopes would drive your choice? Number 2. How does the courage of one quiet person change the fate of hundreds during the darkest moments in history? Number 3. What does Mary's story teach us about the strength of community when the world feels like it is falling apart? This is WWII Files. See you in the next one.